get to the right doctor and get the information, then they probably get started. afternoon. On behalf of Grandma Eileen and the entire family, we welcome and thank you for being with us today as we celebrate the life of Bill Epstein, my grandpa. He has been many things to many people: husband, father, grandfather, son, brother, uncle, boss, friend. And anyone who knows Grandpa knows that he liked to do things his way. And that will be the theme of today's celebration. You will hear stories from several of us about the incredible successes he had in his business ventures, the many lives he impacted personally and professionally, and the ways in which he lived his life his way. In honor of Grandpa's love for flying, buckle up as we travel through the life of Bill Epstein. We'll do our best to make it a smooth ride. We will first hear from Chris.
Mrs. Epstein asked me if I would consider doing this. She said there's going to be several other speakers, and this is the time we have. And so my question is how do we condense Bill Epstein's life? A man that knew everybody, had been everywhere, knew just about everybody, and done just about everything in 5 minutes. I don't know, but I do consider him one of my honored. I'm honored to be his friend, or would have to be his friend, and a part of his family, and so I appreciate them very much. I've known Bill Epstein all my adult life. My parents knew him all their adult lives, and they worked with at the sewing plant, the manufacturing, out of manufacturing, and as well as my brother and my sister. We spent most of our younger years learning the business and being in there working with Guy, Merv, and Steve, and Julie, and all the rest of them, Mrs. Epstein. And so I always call Mr. Epstein, Mr. Epstein. It was a habit that I started out when I was just a child, and I could never break it. So I always call him Mr. Epstein, Mr. Bill, or Mr. E. We had a nickname that I don't think he ever knew what we called him. We called him Wild Man. And that was an endearing thing, not meant. However, if anybody's ever been on the receiving end of any of his entrepreneurial deals, they might not have such a kind name that we would like to have. But anyway, there are several people speaking today, and there will be from different perspectives. And my perspective is from when we worked together so many years in the manufacturing plants. And so I'm 60, almost 61, and I started out when I was 12, 13 years old, and they were teaching me to learn the business. And so, but then we evolved, life evolves, and so we ended up working together at the airport. So 22 years ago, I went to work out at the airport, and it just so happened his office was across the hall from my office. And so every day, we spoke every single day, and he would come by my office and sit down at the end of the day, or he would, as I was going out, he would ask me to come in and sit down, and we talked about, a debate. He loved to debate, and we had discussions about all sorts of topics, aviation, politics, religion, current world events. He was a very interesting person, very well read, knew about a lot of things, and so we went to lunch together almost every day. But our history, my history with the Epsteins goes back much further, much further than this. So, but anyway, they're part of my family. Talking about how Mr. Epstein influenced people, he influenced many people's lives that would not be realized till many, many years down the road. As for myself, I learned a good work ethic from him. He was a very, very hard worker, and he instilled that work ethic in everybody around him, just by example. He worked so hard, late at night, 7 days a week, and sometimes 18 hours a day or more. And so I think I picked that up. I feel like I'm a hard worker. I feel like the people, I see so many people here that we all worked together years ago, and I know they were all very, very hard workers, very dedicated people, very good people, very good. He's been able to pick good people and bring out the best in people. Aviation was a big part of his life, as we saw today, early this morning, with the flyby. That was such a heart-tugging thing for me. I used to work on that plane, years ago and maintained it, and we flew together. And we had a lot of common. He introduced a lot of this stuff to me when I was young. Aviation. I picked that up when I was young. My brother, my father, we all were pilots and loved aviation. So to this day, I'm still working in the aviation business. So that started out 50 years ago when he started, exposing us to all this stuff. One of the other things that we did is we worked on technical projects together. He was a very engineering-minded person, could look at things and figure them out, and we were always looking at projects that we were always working on together, and he was right there in the middle of all this. And we got so much enjoyment out of working on many technical projects in the factories and the satisfaction of being able to make a complex process or machine work better, faster, or easier. And he never gave up. Once he determined he wanted a solution, a specific solution, he wouldn't give up, wouldn't let us give up. He was a very determined person in everything he was involved with, which in turn influenced us, people that worked around him, to always look outside the box, for unconventional solutions to these problems. And he has, it could just go on and on, all of the ideas and the inventions, and he has several patents that he came up with by thinking out of the box, and that influenced me and people that I know very much. Mr. Epstein was a man of vision. Early on, he brought his young family, being Jewish and from the New York City, to a small 1950s, 1960s deep south town. Started a small company, and not only survived but thrived, and becoming very successful, employing and influencing many hundreds, literally many hundreds of people during the time that we were operating the sewing plants. And he and his family became well known, well respected, and much loved by the community of Ivy and the surrounding area. They worked really hard. The Epstein family worked really hard to be involved and to better their community in many, many ways. He was one of the first in the area, not many people know this, to racially integrate his workforce in the early 60s and late 50s, and which was a monumental thing, at that time. It was not a popular concept back then. He was always concerned for his employees' health and well-being by instituting several company-sponsored in-house health programs, counseling services, and many other things. One other thing he did for us, and this is nothing. There's so much that could be said, but one thing he did that really stood out. He encouraged and subsidized flying lessons for the management staff of the company, and he always had a plane for their use on the company airstrip. So I remember having vivid, good memories of always going flying with my dad, and going with Mr. Epstein, and since this plane was a source of many stories and tales in the Ivy community, with some of these stories growing in embellishment as the years passed. And even when I live kind of in the area down there, but even to this day, people will come up to me in Ivy and say, "Hey, you remember so-and-so that flew under the Mississippi Bridge over there?" so anyway, but it really made a big, big impression. So in conclusion, Mr. Bill lived a long, full, amazing life, accomplishing enough in one life that most people couldn't have achieved in 2 or 3 lifetimes. He was smart and tough, but he was lucky and fortunate to have had a wonderful wife that stayed by his side through thick and thin, wonderful children, all of them, that I feel so close to that I can't even describe. And to the many grandchildren, you have a treasure. You still have a treasure. You lost a treasure, but you still have one. Please take good care of her. She is so special in my life. So, my sincerest condolences to all of y'all. And we thank you for all you've done, and we thank you for letting us share with Mr. Epstein, sharing him with us. Thank you.
We will now hear from Dr. Andrea Drayson.
I was actually hoping to go first so that nobody could steal my thunder or some of the things I was going to say. I've known Bill and Elaine since I moved to Anderson in 1984, and I married an Anderson native, and I thought my late husband David had told me everything I needed to know about Bill. Well, let me tell you, this past spring, in order not to be homeless after I sold my house in 8 days and had nowhere else to live, Bill and Elaine were kind enough to let me stay in their extra condo at Stone Creek Cove. Well, one night, desperate for something to read, and if you've ever stayed out there, the internet leaves something to be desired. And there was no cable in the room I was staying in. I was tired of Netflix. So I started searching in the room, and I found a book that Bill wrote about himself. I don't remember the exact title, but it's The Man from Iowa. They self-published it. I think there were 18 copies. If you want to read it, spend an afternoon, a Tuesday afternoon, in the Roper Research Room at the museum, and there's a copy now there in the museum. And I learned so much about Bill and Elaine and their early life. When my husband said, well, you know, they moved here from New York and started a textile mill, me, the Yankees, thought, well, they moved down when they were about 30, 40, and they, came down here in the 60s and started this plant. Well, Elaine was 18 and Bill was 20 when they moved to South Carolina, of all places. And if you're Jewish like we are, I can hear their mothers going, South Carolina? Are there Jewish people there? Will you be okay? Is there a Ku Klux Klan? Are they going to kill you or what? But anyway, they came, and at 20, Bill had this vision, not to use that word over, but he truly was visionary. He had this idea. He was going to start this textile manufacturing plant in a state where there were no unions, and he was going to make success out of it. Now, I raised 2 boys. I can't imagine either of mine at 20 even knowing how to do their laundry, let alone moving from South Carolina up north or anywhere and starting a business. Of course, they couldn't manage their money, but anyway, here Bill and Elaine came and they started, and he was so successful. And then, as everybody knows, he was smart enough to make good real estate investments. Every time I drive on Beltline Boulevard that connects the East-West Parkway to Brown Road, I think of Bill, because that's his property. And I believe he had that road built. And that allows me to get to Sam's, Walmart, to, Home Goods, Dick's, Kohl's, without ever having to venture out onto Clemson Boulevard with all the traffic and all the stoplights. But Bill, the one thing that struck me about Bill, he was always interested in you. You pass people on the street and they go, how are you? How's work? Really, they're hoping you'll say, everything's good. They really don't want you to start unloading on them. But Bill, he really wanted to know how things were in your life. What were you doing with your career? Did you maybe need some advice? Had you thought about, if you're unhappy at work, well, how can you make it better? And what have you thought about that? I always felt that Bill was like my father, and he was grilling me on what my expectations were for the rest of my life. But he was truly interested. He really looked you in the eye, and you knew that it wasn't just that cursory, so how are you? You're fine. Bill and Elaine have been longtime members of our synagogue. Yes, there is, as they say at the police department, a Jewish church here in Anderson. And when I first met, Bill and Elaine, they didn't come regularly to Friday night services, which was fun. But then once Bill's mom moved down here, they were like regular. And I think she really enjoyed it. She came in, and we're a very small congregation, and if you walk in, 20 people are going to walk over and say hi to you. And I think she enjoyed the attention, but they came regularly. We have one major holiday out of the year called Yom Kippur. That's the day we fast. And we're pretty much in services a good part of the day. There is a little break in the middle. And you can be given an honor to open our little ark or do something. And every year, for all these years, Bill always got the same honor. It came at the final service where he opened the ark, and the name of that service is Nila. It's the last service before we break the fast. And I asked my late husband one day, I said, why do you always give that honor to Bill? He said, well, I can be sure that Bill will be here at that service. Because there's always the memorial service first, that service, and then we break the fast. He said, otherwise, I can't give him an honor because I can't be sure that he will be here. But Bill and Elaine have been wonderful backbones of our temple. I always said when I grow up, I really want to be like Elaine and do all the things she's done. Whenever we needed anything, any contribution to fix the roof, do anything, Bill always was one to donate. I really got to know them both a lot better this summer when, as my brother-in-law said, I was homeless and I was a freeloader staying with Bill and Elaine. But it was really a win-win for all of us. I had company for dinner, and we kept each other company. It was a little more mellow these last few months of his life, but it was kind of fun to watch the PBS News Hour along with them. As we always say in our faith, may his memory be a blessing for everyone.
We will now hear from Grandpa's sister, Iris Catherine.
I wish I wasn't talking now. I have nothing as clever and funny to say. But this helped me learn more about my brother. And I'll just say one thing that I remember quite well that isn't part of my little speech. When Bill and Elaine came down to the South, we were, I think it was Greenville or someplace nearby, and Bill was driving around, and he said to someone outside, is there a Chinese restaurant nearby? And the guy said, I haven't seen a Chinaman since the war. Anyway, I was the youngest, Bill was the oldest, and in between was my brother Merv. Between Merv and Bill was 10 years older than me, and Merv was 8 years older. There was a big difference, so I really was closer to Merv. Unfortunately, Merv was killed in a car accident driving home from visiting Elaine and Bill. I was with them. I was supposed to go with them, but of course I wanted to stay with my sister-in-law and brother. I wanted to be with the kids, and I convinced my parents to let me stay. But the memory of that day, I will never forget. Bill sobbed and sobbed. It was a terrible, terrible experience for him and a sadness. He hemorrhaged tears. Those two were close brothers. It's strange that I don't have many memories of my first years with Bill, but I do remember Merv and Bill getting into trouble. And Bill always knew how to pacify my father, but Merv would never pacify him. And we lived in a three-level home, and the boys' bedroom was upstairs, and they'd get into a fight, and my father would get so annoyed at them. They'd come racing down the stairs, and as they came from the first level to the second, they grabbed the banister, swung around, got down to the basement, and locked themselves in the bathroom. And when they did that, my father, who used a belt at that time, of course today he'd be accused of child abuse, he would take the door off the handles. And by then, my brother had pacified him, and he always gave him a lecture. They didn't really get beaten too many times, but every once in a while they did. Irv was always in trouble, and Bill always knew how to calm things over. And he tried to grill Merv on how to pacify Dad, but Merv never took him up on it. And I do remember very vividly, in between our row houses, there was a lot, and Bill had a 1928 Ford. We called it Clarabelle. And he took me for a ride in it. I was so proud of him, and he even let me have my friends stay in it whenever, we hung around in it. What a sport he was. But the greatest gift he gave me, technically I didn't have a sister, but I did I was very grateful to get my sister-in-law as a sister. I remember the day they drove into the driveway. It was a downhill driveway, and she got out of the car with Bill. It was the best thing in my life. I was about 8 or 9. I finally had a sister. I'm sure many of you are pretty conservative, but one of the important things for my brother was my sex life with my husband. And he always was quizzing me on it. I didn't share with him though. We traveled and we certainly enjoyed each other's company. Bill adored my husband Nat, and we called him off and they chat. And we were a great foursome in traveling. We did very well together, and we liked doing the same things. Nat and I always teased Bill because we sat in the front of the plane in first class, and Bill always sat in the back of the room. And we always knew what Bill was thinking. Gee, did you gain a little weight? Or, I mean, we knew, we thought we were getting fat. But anyway, and we always teased him about his spending habits. And what about that car he drove for 100 years? What about the time he almost blew up our first house testing firecrackers in the kitchen? What about when he took pineapple juice wherever he went? And no matter how fine a restaurant it was, he had to have his pineapple juice in his iced tea. But we knew what he was thinking, and that's what we loved about him. Elaine had to be out one night and left Bill and I to handle the 4 kids. I was probably about 11 then. And they had to get their homework done, they had to have a bath, they had to, do a bunch of things. And Elaine was confident when she came home the kids would all be fine. She walked in, there was mad chaos because I didn't know what was going on myself. And Bill was sitting reading the newspaper. Well, I bet you guys would never believe this. Elaine threw a loaf of white bread at him.
Frozen bread.
Frozen, Anyway, he loved flying, and he loved that my mom would fly with him. Always when he came to Florida, my mother the king was arriving. And she would sit in the car for hours and hours just to be with him. And he loved every minute of it. But when she was nearing her older years and had to either stay where she was but needed a little more care, Elaine and Bill decided that she would come and stay with them. We got to the airport and Bill's plane was all juiced up. And I had made cream cheese and jelly sandwiches for both of them to take on their trip back. And because my mother was not so agile anymore, we had to get 2 mechanics to sort of hoist her up into the plane, which was a riot. Anyway, I tried to say, Mom, I know you were a good mother. I'm not going to cry. I know you tried your best for all your children, and you were terrific. And she said, where's my cream and cheese and jelly sandwich? That was the most important thing to her. She had to be with her Bill a lot, and that's what she called him, okay? And we had so many vacations, and we laughed and we enjoyed one another. We always looked forward to the next adventure. And Bill always tried to beat Nat and I in tennis. I will say he was a gracious loser all the time. He became one of my best supporters and always made me feel special. We looked forward to our phone calls together. I loved him more and more as he got older and older. He was like good wine. He mellowed with age. I was taking my mom down to Florida one day. She usually went with me wherever I went. And her aide said, Mrs. Epstein, shut your shades. You're going to have dust when you come back. She said, don't tell me what to do. So we get downstairs. I said, Mom, why were you so rude to your aide? She was always just trying to be nice. And my mother always used to talk that when she died, she was going to join her son Merv and be with him. And I used to say, Mom, that wasn't nice. She says, well, when I die, she can tell me what to do with my shades. And I said, Mom, when you talk about dying, it breaks my heart. But the only thing that makes me feel better is that you feel you'll be with your son Merv. She said, I will be with him, but he can wait. That's a true story. Anyway, let's see. I guess I should close by saying that whether it's true or not, whether you believe it or not, maybe Bill will be with Mom and Merv, and maybe they'll all be together. Bye, big brother. I remember the brother.
So I am here today to speak on behalf of the 10 grandchildren and 13 great-grandchildren with another one on the way. In truth, no words can ever express the impact that Grandpa had and will continue to have on our lives as an integral part of our childhoods and adult lives. When you think of Grandpa, you likely think of a successful and savvy entrepreneur, businessman, real estate developer, and manufacturing guru. He taught us a lot about science and fiscal responsibility. Madison remembers lessons on how oxygen keeps flames in a fire and that a car window can be like a vacuum. Alex learned that no matter how much you have, save and don't take it for granted. His frugality was exemplified on a trip to a casino with Jamie. I love this story. When Jamie asked if he was going to gamble, his response was that his businesses were his gambling. He proceeded to go to the bar and order a slice of chocolate cake and milk with ice. There's a story there too, but that's for another day. And while as kids we typically did not fully appreciate the many lessons on aerodynamics, engineering, business negotiations, and the like, as adults we have come to realize that he was really teaching us lessons about process, efficiency, problem solving, and hard work. Hastings often demonstrates similar negotiating and problem-solving skills, and Daniel turned an interest in engineering into a profession. Several of us also reflected on our later appreciation for his bluntness, which has come up several times, because we came to understand that it came from a place of wanting to help us be better than we were. Like it or not, we always knew where he stood. And believe it or not, he supported our endeavors, even when it wasn't business or flying. Sarah Ann recalls that he was always really supportive of her dancing and would show her old movies with dancing in them, like Dancing in the Rain. We all know he loved his Turner Classic movies. And speaking of Turner Classic, Scott and Grandpa attended the Turner Classic Film Festival together in 2010. And Scott ended up staying in LA for the next 11 years, working in the entertainment industry. Grandpa was not one to cook or change diapers, as we heard from Iris' story. But in his own way, he showed his love for family. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren were lucky to know a softer man, especially after the birth of our cousin Leah. He showed us how proud he was of us and how much he loved us. For example, Adam remembers how in his later years, when he needed help with balancing, Grandpa, not Adam, he would rest his head on Adam's chest. Adam recalls thinking that this was Grandpa's way of saying, I'm absolutely exhausted, but love you and appreciate you. It was the unspoken words of love, which are very different than the spoken. Also in his later years, several of us reflected on how he would tear up talking about the family and what it meant to him. We are so lucky that so many great-grandchildren were able to know him. Leela, Evie, and Keith in particular enjoyed helping take care of Grandpa. Whether it was helping Grandma feed him, putting lotion on him, or whatever helped Grandma take care of him. Langdon in particular loved helping with the fresh squeezed orange juice, which Grandpa had to have every single morning. Grandpa passed on so many interests and talents to our generations. For Adam and Ross, it's the love of wine. For Grace, it's an interest in fashion and sewing. For me, it's an interest in sports, especially baseball and basketball, but I won't be building a half-court gym in my basement. For Kirsten, it's success in real estate ventures. She absolutely has Grandpa's drive for success in this arena. For Renee, it's finding a career path that she's passionate about. Renee also says because of Grandpa, she looks at her average mileage per gallon and challenges herself to see how high she can get it. He taught us to accept people as they are, and as Ryan shared with me, he hugely emphasized providing a positive legacy for the younger incoming generations of our family, including Calla, Brady, Ryan, Alora, and again, one on the way. There are so many stories I could share, and some I'm not allowed to share, but all of the stories demonstrate Grandpa's propensity to live and do life his way. As I conclude and we continue to celebrate the life of Grandpa, I will share a few lessons from the legacy that Grandpa leaves with us. 1, don't expect a handout, but always be willing to give a hand up to those who need it. 2, work hard and don't be afraid to take risks. And 3, always, always finish all of the food on your plate. It is in continuing to share our memories and living out his legacy that we will honor Grandpa. I will now turn it over to my dad to speak on behalf of the generation before us.
It's a tough act to follow, especially after my daughter. Before I start, yesterday, I went to see Dad at the mortuary. And I've never had anyone close to me die. So it was very strange. Can you hear me now? Yeah, it's like I said, I went to the mortuary yesterday to see Dad. And I've never had anyone close to me except my grandparents who were older. But to experience that, I looked down on him and he was cold. I held his hand. I kissed him on the forehead. And it was like, wow, I'm never going to see my father again, at least in this world. And it was really hard to leave him. I went back and forth 2 or 3 times, and it was just so hard. I've never experienced anything like that. A couple of days before he passed, Mom and I were with him, and Dad was fairly delusional. I mean, he was talking all over the place, so we'd be sitting there, and he would say, how's the plant efficiency going? And he would say, well, the girl's making money. I go, Dad, the plants are fine. You're fine. He would say, and he would go like, yeah, we're in Atlanta. We're going down to New Orleans to have meetings, and we got to get the reorders. And I was like, I tried to bring him back. And after a while, I just said, just let him go wherever he wants to go. And he just went all over the place. He was, frustrated, but it was all about, we got to sign checks. Have I signed the checks yet? I go, Dad, you signed the checks. Have you mailed them yet? Dad, I'll mail them in the morning. Don't worry. And he just went on for a couple of hours, but thank goodness I was able to spend some really great quality time with Dad in the end. And, I really love him and miss him. And, he just taught us so much. So to start with, I just want to thank everybody for coming. There's not one person in here that I'm sure Dad and Mom didn't touch in one way or another. Dad had so many stories, and thanks to Guy, my older brother, we were trying to, which stories can we tell about Dad? And there were so many, but thanks, Guy, for all that help. The joke in our family, everybody knew Dad was a businessman, but how many people knew Dad as a father? I mean, it was always a joke. It was his plane, his property, his wife, and then his kids. And that was Dad. But then as he got older, in the last couple of years, he was so mellow, so sweet. I mean, Mom, God love her, took care of him every day, every night, feeding him through his tube, and it was unreal. He became so mellow and just never complained. He was so appreciative of everything Mom did. And at the end, he didn't care about his property. He didn't even remember. It was sad, but he didn't care about his property or his business. All he cared about was his wife, his 4 kids, his 10 grandchildren, and his 13 great-grandchildren. And in the end, that's really all that does matter. So take a little bit about Dad's life. Dad grew up in Brooklyn, New York, a face among many. And due to some learning challenges, Dad saw life through the lens of an underdog. I'm not sure how much you knew Dad, but I didn't realize this till later in life that he was dyslexic. And no wonder he couldn't read, so he couldn't spell cat. I mean, if it wasn't for Mom and Stella, and I'm not sure if Stella's in the audience, there's no way he would have written a letter. And I didn't realize Dad had that. But he always looked at, like I said, through a lens of an underdog, and always striving to better throughout his life and to enhance others around him. Dad always felt that everyone deserved an opportunity to succeed. And one thing that really impressed me as a young kid, Dad hired a mechanic, had one hand and a hook. I thought, wow. And he hired a plant manager who had one hand and a nut that he had, I guess, shot off during the Korean War. And, and then he was like Chris said, he was so progressive with blacks and whites that I once heard that if there was a fight or an argument between a black and a white employee, he wouldn't ask whose fault it was. He would fire them both. And he did that. And then after that, he created an incentive for the white employees to enhance and help new black employees coming into the company. And as a kid, that really, really impressed me, that Dad was that progressive. Dad, he wasn't one to really say I love you, but we knew he did. Dad loved sports. And even though Dad wasn't necessarily the greatest athlete, he made up for it in just ferocious determination. My dad, when he set his mind to it, man, he was determined to do anything. Even after work, he would scrimmage high school football with the football players. And he would come home, the dirtier he was, the happier he was. I mean, Dad was, but his vision was always to provide the opportunity for all of us to be the best athletes we could be. He built a baseball field in our backyard, and every Sunday morning at 7 a.m., and if you know Dad, he didn't believe in sleeping late. We all got up, and at 7 a.m. we were out there hitting balls, playing pepper. If you don't know what pepper is, it's, the kids are 5 feet in front of him, and he's just hitting ground balls to us. And he just loved doing pepper. And as we got older, we had a fence out there, and we'd hit balls over the fence and hit our neighbor's roof constantly. And as we got older, he would build the fence up higher and higher and higher until we couldn't hit the roof anymore. And then in football season, Dad was all about sports. He would paint our helmets. Every season, he would paint a different color with a different logo of different teams. And we'd be out there running pass patterns. Anyway, this is special. I've got to figure out how to keep it on. But this is my Uncle Mervin's watch that Dad went into his safety deposit box a couple of weeks ago. And so my name is Merv. I was named after Uncle Mervin, and he passed away. Mom was pregnant with me, and God knows why I got this name. Merv Epstein. How Jewish can that be in Ivy, South Carolina? But this is a watch Dad had that he bought for Uncle Mervin, and it says to Merv, my brother, 1950. So I'm going to keep wearing it. I got to keep it on me. Anyway, sorry to get off track with that. So during football season, like I said, he painted our helmets, all different colors, and we were always running pass patterns. Dad would draw it out on the ball, and we'd get in a huddle. We had to do button hooks. 5 feet down, 5 steps down, turn around, quick pass, boom. We would do down and outs, down 10 steps, fake to the right, go to the left. But if we didn't fake, we'd be doing it over again until we got the fake right. But he spent a lot of time with us just teaching sports. Thank goodness, we all turned out to be pretty good athletes. We all played 3 sports in high school. But we knew if we weren't playing a sport, we were working. We were in that factory, so we wanted to play sports. Even at 4 or 5 years old, I remember, he would take us to the plant, and any of the sewing operators in here would know. We had to pick up thread, and there were hundreds of spools of thread. So we'd go through and pick up all the threads, and we have to separate them all by color. So I never knew how many colors of thread there were. And it was unreal. But no matter how busy Dad was, he never missed one of our games. For all 3 of the boys, and Julie was a cheerleader, he would be traveling and going places, but he never ever missed one of our games, which has always meant so much to me. I mean, that's true dedication. One of the smartest things Dad ever did was he built a gym in our house, because he knew, I mean, Dad had tremendous vision, and he knew that living in a small town, you know, idle time is trouble, and he wanted to keep us off the street. So he built this gym. We would date till 11 o'clock at night. We'd come home at 11, and we'd play basketball till 2 or 3 in the morning. And it was just, it kept us off the street. I've never been drunk in my life, believe it or not. I've never been in a street fight. So either I was a wimp, or you know, Dad, I thank Dad for keeping us out of trouble. He really was very smart in that area. In that gym, we played wiffle ball, we played basketball, we had dance lessons. I mean, we did so much in there. We did things that there's no way Mom and Dad would want to know. But we won't talk about that right now. Guy was always a leader in that. Dad was an amazing explorer of the world. He and Mom saw every continent and saw more countries than you can even count. He wanted to experience the world from the depths of the ocean, because he was a scuba diver, to the highest of the atmosphere through that plane that he loved so much. And Dad always tried to expose us to every experience. He took us so many places. He took us spring training, Grand Canyon, scuba diving. I mean, there was so many. I mean, guy said one time the other day he took us to 14 cities or 16 cities in 14 days or something. Unbelievable, you know. And I know you know this too, but we were flying over the Grand Canyon and we were all playing cards in the back seat. And Dad's like, look over the Grand Canyon. We're going, yeah, okay, good. He was so angry at us, which I don't blame him for that. And it sounds like it was a whole boys' house. And probably it was most of the time. But he found something he wanted to do with Julie. So he found a father-daughter outback survival trip on the coast of Maine to take Julie. So they spent 4 days picking berries, fishing, everything they could do to find food, just not to starve. And if you're my sister, she does not like bugs. So God, she was not going to sleep on the ground. So she slept on rocks. And so after that trip, Julie never forgot that, oh my God, all the bugs, all the rocks, whatever. But Dad, to him, it was experience to spend with his daughter. So he did try to balance us out, you know, the best he could. And years later, you know, to make up for that trip, he took Julie and John to Japan. And obviously the beds were a lot more comfortable. And no rocks and no bugs, right, Julie? So, you know, Dad took us everywhere. I got to tell you 2 quick stories about Dad. You know, we always knew Dad was an entrepreneur. 2 quick stories about Dad is, you know, as you know, he loved building businesses. He sponsored a boxer, he sponsored a singer, had an ice cream company, so many other businesses. But the funniest thing I remember as a kid, that Dad tried to be a cowboy. Does anybody, if you guys who worked with him remember this, but here's Dad, grew up in New York City, probably never seen a cow in his life. And he wanted to raise Black Angus. So he had his cowboy hat, his boots, his cowboy shirt with tassels, and a lasso. I can just see Dad running, trying to lasso that cow. You know, good luck, Dad. So anyway, so he bought these cows, knowing Dad, after he bought the Clemson property, he bought the property on Clemson Boulevard. So he thought, if I move the cows onto Clemson Boulevard, I can zone it agriculturally, and that way he could save taxes. And that's what he did. So one night, cold, rainy night, middle of the night, Dad gets a call. The cows are out walking on Clemson Boulevard. Next day, he sold them. And his cowboy days are over. But the last story I'm going to tell you, and this is probably Dad. I mean, it's unbelievable. Among sports, Dad, for some reason, skiing was high on his priority. So our first trip, Dad takes us to, blowing rock in North Carolina. And of course, we didn't have ski stuff, whatever. So you guys at the plant. So Dad dresses up in our long johns, covered with our flannel pajamas, covered with our blue jeans, and then wrapped us in plastic bags. You know, the kind that you have the dry cleaner? Well, he got those from the plant. He wrapped us up in those plastic bags and then taped us with masking tape or packing tape from the plant. It was like, oh my God. And we were as stiff as a tin man. And we still froze our butts off. So, but that's Dad. He was frugal. He watched that bottom line, boy. He was a character, but he never deprived us of any experience. So, and there are so many stories about Dad. But anyway, to be on the serious side, the greatest achievement Dad ever did, and the smartest, was falling in love and marrying the greatest wife any man could want, and giving us the greatest mom any kids could want. I mean, and she's humble. She doesn't want anyone to talk about her. But the love that her kids, her grandkids, her great-grandkids have for her is unbelievable. She is everybody's go-to and everybody's best friend. And as kids, we could not have ever asked for a better mom. She is wonderful. And Guy once asked Mom, he said, Mom, why did you decide to spend your life with Dad? And she told Guy, she says, Dad was the sweetest of all the boys I knew. And so, at the end of his days, Dad was the sweetest man. He loved Mom. He thanked her all the time. I would see them holding hands together. And he just loved her dearly. Amazing. They spent, when they got young, Mom was 16, Dad was 18. And people, parents, everybody say, you guys are too young. You don't know what love is. Well, here we are, 73 years later. They had a life together. It was amazing. And so I guess in the end, Mom, you were not too young at all. Dad had a life full of exhilarating highs and tragic lows, as Ira said. The most painful was losing his brother. And I can't imagine the pain, of buying him a car and then having him get killed going home in that car. I can't imagine the guilt Dad felt. It's probably just unbearable. So in the end, to Dad, every day is a good day to fly. Now's the time for you to go see your brother, go see your mom and dad, and go see your almost adopted son and best friend, Julian Maxwell, who was Chris's father. They were so close. Julian worked for Dad when he was 14 as a sweeper, and Julian became vice president of the company. He was a great friend to the family. He was a great friend to us as kids, being in the business. And Julian was Chris and Greg. Julian was just phenomenal to us. So, Dad, it's time for you to go see Uncle Mervyn. He's been waiting for you for a long time. So when you see him, give him my best. Dad, thank you for giving us such a good life. We miss you greatly, and we love you. Thank you. Mom.
What a crowd. I just want to thank you all for coming and making this such a very special day for us. And I just want to tell you two little things that they couldn't say. Number one, if it wasn't for Bill, I wouldn't have all this wonderful family because, as you can all guess, he was so intimately involved. 1953. I had never heard of Iowa South. And this was totally Bill's idea to open up the plant and to move south. And so I am so grateful because look at all the wonderful friends that I have. I'm grateful that he did that. And I hope to get to speak to every one of you after this is over. And I'm available for hugs.
We are going to conclude with a song that is Grandpa's most favorite song. And as we leave, we invite everyone to join us for a reception that Grandma is hosting for everyone who wants to join us. And we hope you will. Thank you.